killed our building. I was like, and that's what architects do. We kill your memories.
What's architecture really about? Archispeak is a show that dares to peek under the architectural kimono, exposing what architecture really is, what it is that architects really do, and show you why we are passionate about our chosen profession. I'm Evan Troxel. Join Neil Pan, Cormac Phelan, and me as we have a casual conversation about all things architecture, which includes all the stuff people don't talk about. Think you already know what architecture is really about? Tune in to find out. It's time for some Archispeak. All right, welcome to episode 7 of Archispeak, and this week we're going to be talking about... Cormac took a little bit of time and posted some stuff on Facebook and Twitter, and we've also been collecting comments on our website at archispeakpodcast.com. And for everybody listening, you can follow along with links and items that we talk about during this show on our website. And if you go to episodes, you'll see that here at episode 7, we're going to be following along there. Cormac, you recently have given some presentations to some third graders.
Oh, yeah. And I would like to also thank everybody on Facebook for, jumping in and adding all of these questions. They were fantastic. We got some great questions. But kind of pre-show, we were talking about all these different questions and stuff, and I started thinking about some of the best questions that I actually get about what an architect is, what they do in their daily world is when I go and give presentations to elementary schools. The firm that I work for, we do predominantly K through 12 schools, and we do a lot of presentations, and I also do a lot of career day stuff for my kids. And some of the best ones, and I wanted to share some with you guys, is I had a recent career day presentation to a bunch of third graders at Annapolis Elementary School. And I gave it specifically to the third graders because that's the school that we're currently working on. And we're doing a major renovation, addition, and a complete remodel of, 2 historic buildings. And when we get finished and the students return to the school, those third graders will be the fifth graders. And I wanted to kind of remind them of what the school that they left, and kind of give them a preview of what school they're going to be going to. Gave them all the 3D models and, all the graphics and everything that we normally present to the PTA and everyone else. But after everything was said and done, we gave them a kind of just a Q&A on what it is that architects do. And they're the ones, third graders, more so than architects or adults, give some of the best straightforward questions about it. There's no veil, no nothing. They just say, one of my favorite ones is the normal one. How much do you make?
Yeah, that doesn't change. I gave one to high school students about 2 months ago, and I gave it 2 different career day presentations. That was the first question out of both of them.
Yeah, and so, well, how do you actually answer that? Any of you guys? How would you answer that?
Yes,
question?
Evan, how do you answer that?
It was like, don't do this for the money. I mean, that really,
exactly.
That's kind of the first thing that you say is there is a discrepancy in what people think versus actuality for the most part. And I don't mean to say that you can make a very nice living doing architecture. And so I don't want to give the perception that it's way off from that, because I think you can make fine money. It's not something that you are going to do to become rich, especially working for another firm. And that's not why you should be doing it anyway. I mean, if you are, I would probably question your motives anyway. But it's one of those things where, and how I try to explain it was, you you either know that you are supposed to be doing this, or you know that you are not supposed to be doing this, and you should be looking for something else.
Well, let's not also forget, though, that there are a number of architects out there that act as developers themselves and go out and develop their own projects. And there's money in that. It's not as easy as working for another firm, just sitting there doing your designs and drafting and getting your projects through. But there can be money in that, and that can come from an architectural education and a background.
Yeah, and I think like I've told a lot of people about this, but I learned a long time ago that Nike hires architects to design their shoes, and so there is money in architecture. And if money is your main motivation, I'm sure you can find it. But money is typically not the main motivation of people who are extremely successful in what I define as architecture. They're in architecture because of the experiences that they're able to create and how they're able to change our perception about architecture and how we view the world. They find their success in that. And so sometimes money follows that, and sometimes money doesn't follow that to such a high level, but it really isn't about that. It's about doing what you are meant to do more than it is about making money.
Well, that brings up another good one of the questions on Cormac's list here from the third graders was, what's your favorite part of the job? So that kind of folds in nicely. I mean, if part of what you enjoy doing is designing and building, seeing what you design and what you draw actually being built, and then and having people affecting their lives and hopefully in a positive way, and that can be a really great part of this. And so I know that's one of my favorite parts is seeing your vision, which hopefully comes out the way you want, and then how that affects the people's lives. So a lot of the remodel or addition work that I do, has a real impact, and they're usually coming to me for they have a need. They don't have enough room, or they want to improve a part of their existing house, and they just don't know how to do that. And so that can be a lot of fun, affecting their lives and making it better.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things that you just talked about that we could go into, and Neil, I think that you have a great opportunity as working mostly in residential to affect people's home life. And I this is something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, working in the public realm, because I would love to work and do some residential projects, because I think architecture at its root is about affecting people's lives. And there's too much, and I don't want to call it architecture, there's too many buildings out there that people see that they're just containers of space that they have to spend time in, and it's not something that affects their life in a positive way. And I think the definition of architecture is affecting people's lives in a positive way, and in a way that they probably didn't expect. And so it's something that creates an emotion in you. And that's really where, and another question that came up when Cormac started asking about this online was, when did you fall in love with architecture? And for me, it was when I figured out that buildings can affect how I feel. And when I went to Washington, D.C., and I think I've talked about this in a prior episode, but it was the first time when I was in a public building where it sat me down and said, stop and take it in and think about this. And how does it make you feel? And it made me say, whoa, this is something much bigger than I ever expected. And I think not enough people get to see that or experience that. And that's something that I want to change. That's out there in the public realm. I want people to be affected by it. And that's what art does to people. That the true definition of art to me is it makes you feel something. It can make you feel anger. It can make you feel happiness. It can make you feel peace. It can make you feel like you're a part of something bigger. There's a lot of things it could do.
Well, my biggest thing is, and it kind of wraps into the a variety of different questions that came from the third graders. But I noticed that my pure joy of architecture is honestly, and this isn't any cheesy response. It's the truth. It's every bit of it. It's watching the stuff that you toil over, through meetings and scribbles on the table and in little post-it notes and bumwad and all of this other stuff as it moves through the whole process and it becomes a building, and then experiencing that building through not just your own eyes, which is kind of a renewed view because you've spent, good example is this Annapolis elementary school building. I've spent years on this so far, and we're only at 31.2% as of our last pay app through construction.
Compare that to a doctor or lawyer, another professional in the workplace who sees multiple clients per day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you're spending, for instance, I'm spending from 2011 until 2016 on the project that I'm working on.
I started this elementary school. We did our feasibility study in 2008. We did the scope study in 2008. Did the feasibility study in early 2009. Got board approval in 2009 to begin the whole process. And so from 2009 to 2014, because August of 2014, hopefully we'll be handing over the keys to the principal and everything will be good to go. But
you basically become intimately involved with every aspect of that project.
Absolutely.
And it becomes one of your kids.
Yes. And the interesting thing about it is that, depending on the type of project, whether it's, a complete renovation or a new project or, the wonderful phase while occupied, I am working on another project that we're doing a phase while occupied, rather, complete revitalization of the school. And, I met as part of some of our design process, we interviewed the kids. And I interviewed, kids a couple years ago that were, first graders. By the time the project is done, they're going to be gone. But I'm going to see their faces every Thursday when I go to these site meetings and owner meetings and stuff. I'll see these kids' faces grow up and grow old as I'm shaping this building around them. And I think it's just a fantastic, it's one of the best things that, I could imagine doing. I was listening to one of the things that you were saying, Neil, about, just, kind of this joy and stuff. It was interesting. The very first, I'm digressing here, but the very first cuss word that I ever said in my life was over a building. I was 5 years old and my sister busted me on this, but
and that's when you knew architecture was for you.
You know what? Apparently that's when I did know, because I was watching some steel get swung in the air, and there's probably some roof trusses. I was 5 years old, so I didn't know what they were. But I looked at it and I'm like, holy shit. My sister looked at me and she, I'm telling Dad. And she did. And I got in trouble, but I was hooked.
It was worth it.
It was absolutely worth it.
Yeah, that just reminds me. I see buildings going up around me in my hometown, and it's like you see that primary structural steel going up, and you're like, "Oh man, this is going to be good. This is going to be good." and you can just see so many opportunities, and then what actually ends up happening is not so good, right? For the most part. Yeah. But that uncertainty that you have when you're a kid and you just see that opportunity and like, wow, and it's a really cool feeling.
Well, that feeling hasn't gone away, at least for me.
No,
You see when you see something going up and you had this vision what it was going to be, and and hopefully it turns out all right, as I mentioned in our prior podcast, sometimes it doesn't always work out, but you do have that vision. That's a great thing.
I always thought that would be a cool studio project, would be to take a halfway, basically a building that has its foundations and retaining walls and primary steel, and then say, okay, studio, take this. What can you make out of this?
That would be very cool.
The project went bankrupt.
Very
and then what can you do with this? And I think it would be a wonderful experience to see 30 different perspectives take on the same bones of a project. And where can you take it?
And that would be actually a very, I think that's, any professors listening out there, that would be a fantastic one, because...
No. That's for the Archispeak studio that we're going to run, right?
There you go. I like that. That'd be perfect.
Archispeak conquers the world.
We've trademarked it already.
That would be great. Because, think about it. That is a great concept, because, so many times we have to work in such demanding constraints. And what better way to push? We always have to take these constraints and push our creativity. What better way to introduce students to creativity with the ultimate constraint when you're all starting with the exact same bones? What can you do with it? And watch 30 different creative minds just go at it and just create. Oh man, that would be fantastic.
No limits, right? Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I tend to gravitate back toward, is the constraints of the project. Even when you're done with the project, you as the designer, the project manager, what those constraints were, but you also know that people who are going to experience the project are not aware of what those were. For instance, I worked on a building on a community college campus that was a high school within the community college campus, and there are so many constraints within there. There were seismic zones. There was these invisible items, and if you were to go there and experience the building, you might say, why did they hang the library on a second floor over nothing and cant the columns underneath? And you would never know the answer to that if you were just to show up one day and see the building. And I'm wondering if that's kind of something that architects could help tell the story of their building, either to the users, which, the users may be aware of it, but they may not be, or in a kiosk kind of a situation in the building. But how do you tell the story of how you got to that final place with the building? Because I think that those stories help kind of propagate ownership over that building within the user group. I think that's what helps architecture become interesting and important to people who actually sit in those buildings every day.
You start a podcast, Evan.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
For every building, you dedicate an episode. Yeah.
Well, you guys talked earlier about the projects that you guys typically work on and how long they take, in years, and that's definitely not always true in residential. I do know some projects that actually I was involved in one, a very small project actually, that did take almost 2 years, 2.5 years before it was completed, and that had a lot to do with the clients and the jurisdiction actually. But a lot of residential projects can take just a few weeks sometimes, or just a few months. When I did production housing, we would do sets for entire tracts of houses in 12 to 16 weeks or so. 3 to 4 months we would do it and submit for a permit in 12 weeks. And so, and that's 3 or 4 plans, 3 or 4 elevations. And, I know a lot of people listening probably across the United States, and I don't know about other countries with their production housing that they have, or if they have it. But, on the West Coast and in other areas, I've seen some really nice stuff. And out here, we do some of the areas that I've worked in, have a pretty high design standards. And it's still production housing, so it is what it is. But they're not just stripped down stuff that you might see in other parts of the country. There's a lot of detail and a lot of design that goes into the houses. And, so those types of projects, though, can still only take a few months. And that's not necessarily for construction, but, in an entire development project, because I also worked for builders doing, final maps and planning and stuff like that. I mean, we would basically start a project and within a year, break ground, and, within a few months after that, we've got models going and we're selling. So, a lot of these types of projects can take place in much faster time frame than larger public projects.
Yeah, and retail's a lot like that too. I've done some retail, and it goes so fast that it's a similar experience to that.
All right, guys. I'm gonna be the taskmaster here, or the list.
You're gonna bring
master.
it back.
I'm gonna bring it back to our list here, because
Cool.
we did have some really good questions submitted, and I do want to hit a few of them, as many as we can in the allotted time that we want to do it. But I want each of us to ask a couple of go through and pick out some of our favorites of this list. But one that is always my favorite, and it comes from everybody that I talk to about architecture, whether you're 4 or 40. They always ask, do architects have to be good at math?
Yes.
And, I always tell them, I always start everything with a joke. So, I was like, well, I got into architecture, so because I wasn't good at math. And they're like, what? You have to be at math? I'm like, of course you've got to be good at math. But, math is just a part of the overall, list of things that you have to be good at. It's not like we are dealing with math all the time, but we are dealing with the critical thinking that comes with, solving a good math problem, or, whether it's, understanding and interpreting a book, it's all of these different things. So, so what do you guys think? Do architects have to be good at math?
Well, first of all, yeah, I think that's a myth. You don't have to be good at math. But when I was in school, when I was in high school, I think that's every guidance counselor's assumption is that if you are good at math, this is a field that you could go into. And I took calculus in high school, and I did so poorly in it. It sucked. I was very good at math up until that point. I mean, I was a very good student in everything until calculus, and it, honestly, it had a lot to do with the teacher. But I went to tutoring because it was the first class I ever got a C in, and it was heartbreaking. But then when I got to Cal Poly, and the prerequisite for the entire 5-year program was trigonometry, I had to realize it upon myself, that it was the guidance counselors were wrong. Wait, go ahead.
I was just going to ask. I mean, your program only required trig.
That was it, and I took it at a community college. Man. I mean, I had already taken it in high school.
Damn!
But I took it at a community college to get the the grade in it, so that I didn't have to take it at Cal Poly.
I had to take calculus because our other prerequisite was physics with calculus.
See, we had to take physics, but we didn't have to go above trig. It was interesting, and that's when I thought high school guidance counselors don't know anything, because I wouldn't have taken it in high school and had such a bad experience with it. I probably would have ended up taking it anyway to somebody who was really good at teaching it, and had a much better experience with it. Because I wish I was better at math now, or I wish I had held on to the concepts like I did when I was in high school, when it was so natural for me. Right. Because I think it would help balance the artistic side. I mean, if you look at Santiago Calatrava's work, who is an architect and an engineer, it's amazing work. And I think that it gives you a leg up when it comes to design.
He's not doing it to balance his creativity. He's doing it because he wants to control his fees.
Well, and it has everything to do with his approach and his brand.
Yeah,
but,
no,
but
I'm only joking.
It is beautiful to look at nonetheless.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, I think, how good do you really need to be at math? You need to be able to do the basics. I'm not so sure I really needed that entire year of physics or calculus. Maybe at Cal Poly, at San Luis Obispo, we had a really good physics course. It was actually, I think it was even titled Physics for Architecture. And it took the concepts, and that's why we were required to take the basic physics courses. But I think that probably was a little more than we really needed, because essentially we were taking the physics courses with the math majors. And, they were hard and charging on, math major physics. And I was like, I just kind of understand how buildings move. And, and so the third class really addressed that, the physics for architecture. But wow, that whole year of calculus, I think that was just like a lot of wasted time, at least for me. I'm not Calatrava, so and I don't engineer my own buildings. At San Luis, we also, as separate, which I think was great, was we took the classes for engineering, and so that included things like wood design and steel design, and also concrete design. And I'm not so sure how much of the physics was directly related to those courses. I can't remember, but I don't remember a lot of that.
It should have been a lot.
So, well, no, it should have been. But I mean, once we had the basic formulas, and the concepts of how you design in those materials, I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm just forgetting. It's been a while. But, I guess it did help. You had to maybe know the basics, but wow, a whole year of that stuff, that was pretty brutal.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is actually a follow-up question to do architects have to be good at math? And because both of you have talked about, structures one way or the other, or engineering one way or the other, and then kind of bringing it to one example of Calatrava. And how much do you guys actually design or are actively involved with the overall design of your structures? And I'm not talking about just, okay, here's my shell, I'm going to pass it off to the engineer, and the engineer is going to basically think it out and, get back to me and say, okay, well, we're going to need to have a cast in place concrete wall that's cantilevered because it needs to be a 2-hour rated wall. I'm not talking about, we, at one of the firms that I used to work for, in fact, it was one of the first ones after graduation, worked for a few before, but this was the first one after graduation. We never passed off our building to our engineers until we at least fully laid out the overall guiding concepts of our structure, because we wanted to always maintain, because a lot of times we would do exposed structures and things like that, and we always wanted to maintain a, kind of that aesthetic control over the structure. And I'm just curious, how much do you guys do that now? And is that something that you guys concern yourself with, or is it something that you just collaborate with the engineer, or do you have like a, I don't really want to say overbearing kind of control of it, but do you do a lot of guiding to the engineer?
For me, it really kind of depends on the project. For most, remodel type work that I've been doing mostly the last few years, it's not critical. A lot of that's going to be hidden. There's nothing really fancy going on. We don't have a lot of exposed things. So it's not as important. Although I will say that being the case, though, when I'm designing it, I understand the concepts of how essentially it's going to lay out. I may not have, exactly how it's going to go, but I understand, hey, I can do X and I can do Y because I have a basic understanding of how this can be put together. And so, so I'm not necessarily laying it out for them, but sometimes I will actually, and sometimes that'll come back to me. But when I've done higher end custom work, there's been more interaction with the engineer because things are going to maybe be exposed, and there's much more of a customization going on, and so you have to do that. At least that's what I've mostly been involved with. But when you're doing, residential, just a lot of production, which I've spent a lot of my career doing, there's very little of that you're really directing it. But that's, again, based on the type of work that I've been doing. I would suspect with Evan, like you posted a picture today of this most amazing three-dimensional section perspective of a building you're working on now. And I was just like, wow, that's a great study model. And obviously you have to have a decent understanding of how that can be put together in order to generate even the model.
Yeah, and I think, Cormac, you kind of laid the groundwork in the question of how I tend to work with my teams. And this leads even back to the math question, which is you have to have a really good sense of what it's going to take to do it, even if you don't understand how to do it yet. And it's agree. Kind of an instinctual feeling that you have when it comes to, okay, number one, I kind of know the rules I'm playing by. This is a CMU building. This is a wood building. This is a steel building. This is a concrete building. Okay, so where do I fall within there? What are my spans? When you start to think about engineering, you're thinking about spans and depths, and then are you thinking solid girders? Are you thinking trusses? Are you thinking what kind of footings? Are we thinking moment frame? Are we thinking brace frame? Are we thinking shear wall? And so I think that, what I'm going for is I'm not trying to think as a designer with a capital D, which we've talked about way back in episode 1 or 2. I'm thinking as an architect. And as the architect, you are in charge of, and in charge is maybe a little too strict, but you are overseeing all of the disciplines, and you have to be aware of kind of the ground rules that everybody has to work within. And so when I lay out a floor plan, because I think the planning of a building is so important. I will spend a lot of time working out the planning before I get to the form making, because if you can solve issues in planning, that's the best place to solve them before you get to actually making the form. If you can capitalize on the planning to make form that inspires people and enhances the solution to the problem, even better. But a lot of times when it comes to form, people get stuck in style, and that tends to hold form making back because style is a dirty word, right? I mean, it's like you want to solve the problem. You don't want to fall within this is me speaking. you don't want to fall within a stylistic preference. If you can avoid it, that's great. But sometimes you can't. And so even if you're forced to go down the style road, you've made a really good building by doing your job in the planning. But so right after the planning is done, that's when I want to bring in the rest of the team and say, okay, how are we going to accomplish this structurally? How are we going to accomplish this with mechanical? And then, these guys are really fun to work with, and it's a huge opportunity at that point to say, well, what if we do this? Well, what if we do this? Well, and most of the time, my experience is those engineers will say, we can make this work. And that's when you think, well, then how can we push this a little bit further and get even something better? And that is a great experience to go through. And it's really great if you can drag your client along with you through that experience, because then they start to see the value in the process. And I think that's something that's kind of underlying this entire conversation from the third graders on up who are asking the questions, why do you do this? And I think it has to do a lot for me with the process that we go through. It does take forever, in quotes, to get these projects done. And that process can be the thing that really takes it to the next level. And that's what when it comes to bringing in this team and collaborating, it can make the whole thing so much more enjoyable when you're all working toward making the best thing you can in that process.
What were some of these questions that you guys gravitated to that, you're like, oh, I definitely want to touch base on that one. I mean, I'm going through this list, and it's interesting. I mean, we've hit a lot of them without actually having to read them out in kind of the rigid manner. You were just talking about, forming a team, and, we got a great question from David that, was like, if you could form a team, and, you kind of asked a couple of different questions, and I think just, in the dialogue of the last answer of how you, go about, approaching structural concepts, I think that kind of like started to wrap into some of those questions. But I did want to actually bring up this one, and it was from Jason, and I'm definitely going to pass it to you two, because you two are like the tech gurus here. Mac or PC?
Jason, Jason, let's say the whole name here. It's Jason, let's say Rostar. He wanted to know Mac or PC, Revit or the field. And okay, so if you're saying Mac or PC, Revit or the field, well, if you're Revit, you're PC, right?
True. For now. So until Revit.
You must know something that we don't.
From what the rumblings, this was something that, when AutoCAD left Mac and said, fine, we're taking our ball and going home, and didn't build didn't build AutoCAD for the Mac. They,
right.
They said, no, we're not going to do it. And then
14-year absence.
14 years, they rebuilt it. Now, I can complain that they've got two completely different user interfaces. But, in a way, you got two completely different mindsets of users between a Mac and a PC. So
the thing I like about that, I don't have the opportunity to use the Mac version too much, but even though I'm on a Mac, so that answers the Mac or PC question. But I think it gave them the opportunity to say, well, what would we do?
Right.
Starting from scratch.
Well, I can shed a little bit of light on that, because I was involved in the beta program for the Mac version, and in going in and talking to them, they communicated that to us pretty directly, that they have a long time user base on the PC, and making changes to that interface disrupts a lot of people and really upsets people.
Really?
And
I'm sure it's really painful for people
they
on
said
there.
very
that, and
painful.
yet every time they come out with a new release, they change the damn user interface.
Well, they're trying to improve it, and they're trying to improve it in ways that tries not to. I mean, for example, I complained to them about the preference dialog box and the different ways to set preferences on a PC, and they kind of just sighed and said, "Yeah, we don't like it either, but every time we try and do something or make that an improvement or suggest it, we all get shot down because of all the everybody's used to it and they know where to find it." And then when you talk to somebody like me who hasn't used Windows AutoCAD on a PC very often, it just frustrates the hell out of me. And I will say this, I do use the Mac version when I have to do AutoCAD projects, and I found the new interface that they designed for the Mac to be a great Mac interface. I mean, it allows me to actually discover how to do things that I didn't know. In fact, even when I consulted in an office, I went to some of the guys that had been using AutoCAD for like a decade, and I'm like, "Hey guys, didn't you know you could do X or whatever it was?" And they're like, "Oh, how do you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not sure exactly how to do it on the PC, but on my Mac I do it like this." And they're like, "Wow, how did you know that?"
Yeah.
And it's like, well, because the interface was just so much better.
I have to
in
give
my opinion.
I have to give Autodesk credit because of all of the stuff that they're releasing on iOS for the iPad.
Absolutely.
They're hitting that big time.
It's amazing, and it's fun, and it's something for all ages, and it kind of allows people to create things on their iPads.
And I've seen some. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's fun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's way beyond what Autodesk is known for, which is creating these high-end, high-precision, very expensive tools.
Right.
So I really credit them on this direction that they've taken. And at the same time, I mean, AutoCAD is a dying piece of software. For the most part, I mean, everybody's moving toward BIM. We see the value in that. And on the Mac, it's like, well, why didn't you just go to Revit instead of going to AutoCAD first? But I think to them, they still see a life in AutoCAD.
There's a big life.
Yeah, sure.
There's a big life still left in AutoCAD.
And one thing
a
that
lot of it comes from
frustrates the heck out of me is architects are the slowest dinosaurs to move on to the next thing.
Oh yeah.
And that's why they probably do see so much of a life in AutoCAD still.
Well, I can, also shed a little light on why, they did AutoCAD first, is because it's their most dominant product, and to see if there was enough of a market to support development for AutoCAD on the Mac. That they kind of just said, hey, this is our biggest product, and let's dip our toe into this market again with our biggest product and see if there's a market. And I can tell you, they've been pleasantly surprised at how well received the product has been. Even now, they have AutoCAD LT for the Mac as well, and it's sold exclusively through the Mac App Store. And it's a $1,000 program. Now, it's a quarter of the cost of the full-blown AutoCAD for Mac, and they were delighted at the number of people, and I don't have any numbers. I mean, they didn't share that sort of information with us, but they just said they were just ecstatic with the number of people that downloaded essentially a $1,000 program on the Mac App Store, you don't get a free trial. 30-day trial or anything.
Right.
Now, you can pick up AutoCAD off their website for a trial and do that, and students, of course, can get it for free. And but they were very excited, and I think that with that sort of level of excitement and with the growing nature of the Mac market in general, kind of the halo effect of the iPhone and iPod and iPad. that I'm hoping, I hope that Autodesk will see a benefit in trying to bring products like Revit or some of their other design tools, because they've brought AutoCAD to the Mac, but they haven't brought AutoCAD for architecture or AutoCAD for civil. The specialized packages or tools that they sell are just they're not available. So the AutoCAD you get for the Mac is basic AutoCAD.
They're moving away from that though too, because like the newest Revit 13, it's all one Revit. There is no more Revit structures, Revit mechanical, and civil engineers don't use Revit or AutoCAD. They use MicroStation. I mean,
or Civil 3D,
or Civil 3D. But they, right. But so they're probably not bringing that to the Mac, because they're probably preempting the notion that they're going to just wrap all of this stuff up together. Now the licenses become more expensive, but you actually get a lot more power packed program when you're wrapping them all together. And one thing that I noticed early on when we were starting to merge our models together from Revit mechanical and Revit structural into our Revit architectural model, that you'd have clashes and conflicts that were just kind of quirks between the different programs. And even though they were from the same place and the same company, and it was technically the same platform, there were just those little quirks that kind of created all those weird little clashes and conflicts. And now that they've, especially for 13, now that they've rolled everything in together, the project that I'm working on right now, we don't really see as much issues as we have. Everything, people can build off of each other's model a lot easier, and it seems to work a lot more seamless. But I did want to say one thing about when you were talking about the AutoCAD being kind of like the dying breed, and one of the things that I can just substantiate, not from the business side, but from the construction side, Neil's point, more and more detailers and contractors are requesting the CAD drawings, because they want to, at least use the base drawings that we create, or at least export out of Revit if that's what we're doing, or straight from AutoCAD. They want to use that as kind of like their baseline for all of their shop drawings, which goes to a completely different topic, which is how do you control the stuff that you've created? We've
like intellectual property.
Yeah. Well, I was sending out a bunch of CAD release forms that basically talk. It's a whole boatload of different legalese and liability waivers and disclaimers and things like that. And then of course there's the fee of, okay, we've already designed the building. Now we're doing a portion of your work for you. But what we're doing is we're, preparing those documents by cleaning them up, taking a lot of like notes off, ensuring that, it's either compressed or, bound and stuff like that, just so that, you're getting exactly what you need and nothing more.
Yeah, I just did the same thing with it. I just prepared a CAD file for a CNC piece of a project that it's a series of wall panels that need to get CNC'd, and I want to make sure they get done right. So yeah, I'm going to give you the base files, but at the same time, it's like you are doing part of their job for them.
Yeah. Well, does your firm send out CAD release forms to make sure that they sign? And,
oh yeah,
have disclaimers and waivers and legal liability. You are assuming the legal liability. With use of this, file and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. I mean, do you guys do things like that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we even have, I've even seen it on a school that was recently completed where the contractor, the GC on the project, took all of the CAD files. I mean, even though we had done the full project in BIM, and so had structural, and so had electrical and mechanical, they rebuilt their own BIM model of the entire project so that they could do all their own clash detection and make sure that everything was going to work out okay. And that was just like,
so did they
mind-blowing
did they
to
do
me
that
they would go to that length to kind of show the owner that they were proactively trying not to, go after change orders and give the wrong impression.
Well, that's interesting. That's
it was.
So let me just, I'm trying to wrap my brain around this because, we have a long-standing argument with contractors about, BIM and as-built and everything. And so they took all of the drawings before they started construction.
Yep.
I like that idea. And in fact,
and as they were going along, they were building the fire sprinkler system into the project because our fire sprinkler consultant had done it all as single line. And so they actually went in and built the fire sprinkler lines to make sure that, and they found areas and they said, okay, it's not going to be able to do this right here because you've got a structural member in the way. So what are we going to do about that? Way before the guy came in to install fire sprinklers. So, I mean, it was kind of a very proactive approach to building the building before they had to build the building, right? Yeah. So that they could make sure that they were going to do it exactly the right way.
Well, guys, I'd love to do like an entire show, I think, about different CAD programs and some of these things.
Yeah, the technology side of it.
Yeah, the technology side of it. And I know that's been one on our list for a while, and I'd love to do an entire show about that. But I think to kind of wrap up some of our questions for tonight and for this podcast, I think it'd be fun to answer one of these ones from the third graders, which is, if you weren't an architect, what would you be? I think that's always a fun one to consider. So, Cormac, how do you answer that one since you get that question?
I told them...
We know the answer.
I would be sad. I would just
You'd be drawing comics.
I would be, actually. I told... in fact, I was... A lot of the kids that are in this particular school, they're all... Because Annapolis has got the Naval Academy there, a lot of these kids are military children. And, so I guess you can kind of say pandered to the crowd and told them about my military experience and how much I enjoyed it and stuff like that. And probably if I didn't pursue the path of architecture early on and was bitten by the bug that I was talking about, I enjoyed being in the military. I actually, if architecture was taken out of the equation, because I used the military as a means to an end to get, because I wasn't quite the most studious of kids in high school, and I knew I wasn't going to be earning myself a scholarship, but I knew what I wanted to do. And felt like I needed a lot of growing up and also just kind of perspective. I wanted to kind of get outside of the box of the neighborhood that I grew up in and really never left. And I wanted to get kind of a slightly more worldly view. But I always had architecture in the back of my mind as this was what I was going to be doing. But if I took that out of the equation and just looked at a lot of the things that I did when I was in the military, and it was just a fantastic experience, and I probably would have stayed.
Yeah. For me,
how about you, Evan?
For me, it would have been, one of two things. I would either be building things. I've always wanted to build things, and as an architect, I get to decide what and how something gets built. If I weren't an architect, I would be making the things. I'd be a fabricator. I'd be a builder, or I would be a musician. You guys have,
aren't you? You are
all heard the music that we tag on the end of these podcast, and that was a band that I was in, and when I was doing that, there was nothing better. I mean, when you are, and I think it's kind of like this for all artists, when you are your own client and you are writing music or you are making things that you want to see, and people are just paying for that because they love it too. They're not telling you what they want. That's the best feeling. So, I mean, that's kind of an easy answer for me. It would be one of those two things.
Well, I've had an interesting experience over the last few years. I've gotten to ask myself that question quite a bit, and I think I don't know exactly how to answer it, to be honest with you. Having the economy the way it's been and finding work has been a challenge. I've often thought, what else would I do? And I keep coming back to, I don't know if I can do anything else.
True.
This is just what I do. And I can't imagine doing anything different. Different aspects of the project. I mean, Cormac's mentioned, the process he goes through and how he enjoys all aspects of that. And I enjoy that as well. And there's different avenues to get those experiences and that we can do. And then I've done that. But I still think there was a time when I first applied to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo where I said, well, okay, my preference is architecture. And if I don't get into architecture, maybe graphic design. And I think that maybe that does answer the question for me, is I would still be doing some sort of design, and whether or not it would be 3-dimensional with a building or 2-dimensional or perhaps 3-dimensional with a product or something, I think I would still always have been in design somehow, in some way.
I think that the permanence of architecture is what sets it apart from other artistic endeavors like graphic design. There's something about a building, and when we're designing, at least we should be thinking 50 years down the road. One of the things that is so, graphic design is a beautiful art, and there's a ton of meaning behind it. But in today's society, it's, on the web, it's so impermanent. It's passing almost, and that's unfortunate, I think.
Well,
but I think that's what leads me away from that toward something more permanent like architecture.
But isn't graphic design, essentially, capturing the flavor of the moment? I mean, that it's taking your,
not always,
but it's taking your artistic abilities. I mean, I think we've all kind of hinted that we all love graphic design. Doing things like website design and cards.
We probably appreciate it more than a lot of people.
Probably, and so that's, because we're, the creative bunch, and we chose a job that is, in the creative class and all that other stuff. I think that we, gravitate towards things like that. But I honestly think that, with graphic design, I mean, it kind of, it's almost like the social art, it's capturing the flavor of the moment, and that's why it's always changing.
Well, there's a lot of architecture like that too. That's just fashion.
Well, that's true too. But then that's usually the stuff that either just
gets torn down 20 years later.
Exactly.
Just look at what's going on with New York with Billy Sane's building.
Oh yeah, I wanted to actually bring that up and ask you guys what you think about that. Here's a building. It's 14 years old. It is, it's on the cover of their, one of their books. It's, it's used as a great example of this textural, modern architecture. And 14 years later, the people who paid to have it built want to demo it. because it doesn't fit the style of the rest of what they're doing. Their overall vision right now, it just doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah. Wow. It's heartbreaking.
It is. It is. I mean, when you think about it, you because we all know the process that it took, Todd and Billy to get to that point and to be able to, they sweat over that. They went through.
Do we know how many hundreds of people they had to convince?
Probably thousands, really. I mean, because they're on, one of the biggest stages, and, to face the criticism of, the architectural critics and the media and everybody else. I mean, it's just, it's, and 14 years later, like, all that work, guess what, guys? It's got to go.
Yep. All right. Well, let's wrap this up. This has been really fun, and I again, like Cormac said before, thank everybody for writing their questions out, and there's some that we didn't get to, but hopefully we will in a follow up podcast, and because there were some really good ones, and I think that some of the questions take a lot more thought, and we will definitely be thinking about those things. But overall, I think that I'm glad that people are putting stuff out there, and they're giving us stuff to think about, just as the things that they're thinking about, and I really appreciate that they want to know what we think about it. So thanks to everybody for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys can follow along with the links from stuff that we talked about in the podcast at archispeakpodcast.com. And we have a Facebook page. Neil, what's the address for the Facebook page?
Oh my gosh. It's facebook.com/ I think it's Archispeak Podcast, but if there isn't a link on the website, there will be.
Yep, there is.
There is one. So that's probably the best way, is go to the website, click on the link, or if you're on Facebook, follow us, or I guess they don't follow online. I got to get my names right for the different social medias. I guess it's like us on Facebook, and then you can certainly post there, and even ask questions, and we can kind of try and respond to some of those via Facebook or even via Twitter at our own individual accounts, or on our main Archispeak Twitter account, which there's links for those also on our website. So the best way is go to the website. It's all there, and you can interact with us that way.
Cool. And you guys can also follow us on Twitter at Archispeak, ARCHISPK. And I want to leave off with one little question that maybe people can think about and post. And that is, what are your obsessions? I think that that's something that I heard this week from one of the people who asked a question, Houston. He was in UCLA's graduate program, and he said the first week that he was there with Neil Denari, one of the questions that was asked was, what are your obsessions? And I thought that is such a cool question. So I thought we should ask that to the Archispeak community out there. What are your obsessions? Go ahead and post that to us on Twitter, on a comment on this podcast, or on Facebook. That would be awesome. So, Neil, how can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Twitter at my first initial N, last name Pan, Pann.
And Cormac?
You can find me at Archetype, that's ARCHY_TYPE.
And you can find me, I'm Evan, at ETROXEL, and that's on Twitter. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I used to shy away from the stampede. I'd hibernate, hunker down in my heart at all. To get good at the game, I had to grease up my riot gear, and that craving came when you crossed along, yeah, when you came along. Triple dog dared me, turn the sprinklers on, barefoot in the driveway, baby. Platform dancing, form like a crazy man, dog dare me, turn the sprinklers on. Barefoot in the driveway, baby. I get naked. What do I got for my birthday suit? My little piece of creation. I'm gonna shake my mama, gay mama, gay mama, gay mama, say thank you. What do I have what I want to do? I'm the perfect relation. I'm gonna shake, I got love for you, love for you, love for you, love for you. I got love for you. I got love for you. I got love for you. I used to shy away from the limelight. I tucked my face, uptight my sleeping bag to build a better base. I had to fly my war paint right. I'm a better place since you made me upright. Love is never fight. Triple dog dare me, turn the sprinklers on. Barefoot in the driveway, baby. Platform dancing, public praising, friend, someone who probably tumble, diving face first, fat witch and says, braving birthdays to you. Oh, baby girl. Triple dog dare me, turn the sprinklers on. Barefoot in the driveway, baby. I get naked. What have I got for my birthday suit? My little piece of creation. I'm gonna shake my mama, gay mama, gay mama, gay mama, say thank you. What would I have what I want to do? I'm a perfect relation. I'm gonna shake, I got love for you, love for you, love for you, love for you. Get naked. What have I got for my birthday suit? My little piece of creation. I'm gonna shake my mama, get mama, get mama, get mama, say thank you. What do I have what I want to do? I'm a perfect relation. I'm gonna shake, I got love for you, love for you, love for you, love for you. I got love for you. It's ridiculous how much love for you.